Ron Musgrave's Pressure Washing Institute Contractors First. Guys, I'm here at 5 p.m. pack time. It is Tech Tuesday with Jerry McMillen, guys. But I don't want to forget, towards the end of the show, about 20 into the show, guys, I'm going to be giving this $200 cookbook away. And yes, guys, it is not too late to get into this. As you guys are sharing the video tonight, we're going to be adding the names to this fishbowl right here. So if you guys share the video, guys, like the video, ask questions, guys, we're going to add you into the contest as well. And when this is over, we're going to draw one lucky winner for a $200 cookbook. How the heck are you doing tonight, Jerry? And what are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, we're going to talk about entry-level pumps and avoiding the problems that they come with.
Awesome. So what kind of a pump do we got? What kind of a pump is that we're talking about there, Jerry? What is that?
Well, this is what you should do, and this is what you shouldn't do. Anything with the all-in-one design to fail. They're made to be difficult to rebuild. They're made to feed you to a service center. They're made to feed you to that online store so you can buy another one every 6 months. It's called a perpetuating mistake by design. Life is already a test.
So basically what you're saying, when there's an all-in-one on that type of thing, it's really not a contractor grade machine. Do you know if that pump will run for 1,000 hours without a rebuild? What would the all-in-one system run? Do you think it's half the life, a third of the life?
Let me explain. So the intent on this particular version is direct drive. Okay, we're trying to save money on not having to do belts. Version is direct drive. Okay, we're trying to save money on not having to do belts, make it easy to put together, make it easy and inexpensive for somebody to buy one. You know, it's the economy version. This is what, you know, you're going to end up with if you go to Home Depot or you go to Lowe's or someplace like that and buy a pressure washer. And most of the ones online, you got to watch out for this too. There's some of the biggest names in the business pushing pumps that have all-in-one, you know, with the built-in unloader. But here's the deal. You got water seals strangling the plungers, trying to keep water from leaking all over the floor at 3,600 RPMs, right? Okay. Well, there's no lubrication for those seals. The seals are, it's amazing that these things work at all. And the heat is going out with the water as you've got the gun open and it's passing through. But then you want to let go of the gun. We like these unloaders. It's convenience. You can lay the gun down if you need to and, you know, change tips or whatever. But when you do that, you've got all that heat going, what? Bypassing in 3 ounces of water? Well, that's going to overheat real quick. So even if they've got a thermal relief valve that's 2/3 hanging out in the wind and not immersed in the 2 ounces of water that's bypassing, this thing's going to overheat in just 2-3 minutes and start damaging the water seals. I don't care if it's right out of the box, brand new, you just put it on, you just fired it up, and it doesn't matter if you got great garden hose pressure. That's not the point here. The point is that it's bypassing and that water's getting hotter and hotter by the second. Okay, you can buy a 4,000 at Home Depot, for example, and it's going to overheat and bypass in just a few minutes. If you were to walk away and do something else for 5, 6, 8 minutes, you'd come back to a whole lot of water on the ground and a pump that doesn't come up to pressure again. And if you let it go for 30 or 40,
well, when you say doesn't come up to pressure again, you might be like, hey, it's supposed to be a 3,500, and now you're at 2,800, and you're pretty much stuck with 2,800 unless you're going to rebuild the pump again.
Right. Now let's go a step further here. Okay, even if you were to keep the gun open and be nice to it, let's call it, we're going to be nice to it and keep the gun open and not let it overheat and bypass. Okay, you still have an unloader built into the head of the pump. Now let's talk about unloaders. If this is going to be for commercial use, and you know, heaven help us that you've actually got jobs coming in, you're working every day, you're going to use this thing every day. Okay, how long does an unloader last? Typically, what, a year, year and a half, maybe a year and a half. Okay, but wait, this one's built into the head of the pump. And to rebuild an unloader, we don't
Hold
do
on,
that.
Jerry. I got to stop you right there. I got to interrupt you. So you're telling me that an unloader, if you were running it every day, it's just going to fail in probably a year and a half, right? I mean, it's going to fail. It's not there's just things. So I want to ask this question here, Jerry. What is the first thing to fail on a pump? Let's say in perfect performance conditions, everybody did what they're supposed to do. Nobody ran it without water. Nobody let it bypass. What is the first component on a pump that's going to fail likely?
The hardest working component on a pressure wash system is the unloader. The hardest working component is the unloader. And on most of these systems have a pressure actuated unloader valve, and there's an outlet check valve in that unloader. And that outlet check valve has an O-ring seat on it, and that O-ring wears out first. When we're doing PM checks, when somebody actually brings us a machine to, check the status of the condition of the machine every 3 to 4 months or whatever, like this, one of the
biggest piece that fails that's the number one condition usually when you
right.
see these come back.
But when the unloader fails,
on a side note, then I want to go to the extreme question. So when it's being abused, is it still the unloader that's going to fail first? If a machine's being abused, is it an unloader, or is it going to be something they're going to destroy something internally in the pump? Obviously, if they're not running the machine right.
Let me answer that when we get to feeding a machine off of a water tank. Let's finish with the direct drive stuff first. Okay. So the hardest working component in the system is the unloader. And that little O-ring on the outlet, you can sometimes change that and get a little bit extra life. But the mechanical part of the unloader wears the housing as well as the set of seals, and the tip of the main pressure valve will actually wear away from the abrasion of high pressure water going past it at 350 miles an hour or more, carrying whatever hard water debris is in that water. So you want to take it off and throw it away. That's the bottom line. But if the unloader is built into the head of the pump, you got to throw away the whole pump. So you don't have a chance at long-term low cost. If somebody says, oh, a pump should last 4 or 5 years. No, it won't if the unloader is built into the head. Oh, you can get a kit? Well, go ahead, try that $89 kit and spend an hour messing with it and then find out that it still won't come up to pressure. Go ahead and waste your own time. I'm not wasting my time on that. That went out the window a very long time ago. So we take unloaders off and we throw them away unless it's an all-in-one. Then we tell the customer, well, now wait, if you brought it in because it lost pressure, so it needs water seals and it needs an unloader because it all overheated and bypassed at the same time. So, okay, so it's going to cost, let's call it $300 to rebuild a pump that you might have bought one out of a box for $250. You're not going to do that. Okay, but wait, let's take that $250 and put it towards a real pump with a real unloader and a real bypass line. Okay, let that gun off for 4 or 5 minutes on this with a whole lot of water bypassing, and the head of the pump is barely warm.
Hold those two up, Jerry, so you see the difference in the size and the inlets. And do you have your dual feed on that one, or that particular one doesn't have the dual feed on it?
The first topic is pressure feed. This is a pressure feed pump system, and this one is a wannabe pressure feed system. Okay. And by the way, the check valves in this little direct drive guy with the all-in-one pump, the check valves are so small, it probably will not even work tank feeding this thing from a water tank. You wouldn't even be able to do tank feed with these. Now, there are slower speed pumps, like electric, that are slower speed pumps that have an all-in-one pump that actually can suction feed from a water tank, but that's a whole different subject. We're not talking about electric machines today. We're just talking about generally the mistake that a contractor makes when he goes to Home Depot and buys a pressure washer or online, okay? And I'm going to call out that there is a big brand name. There's a brand name that says it's the best of the best. It's the cat's meow of pump systems. I don't care what the pump is. AR makes pumps that have the unloader built in. That is an AR pump with the all-in-one. I don't push them. If somebody insists they want to buy the $250 pump, fine. I'll sell it to them for $225, and I'll give them the warning that you better keep the gun open, and I will see you later for this version. I educate my customers so they know what they're doing if they absolutely have to get back to work with a lower repair bill. But the more water you have bypassing, the longer it's going to take that water to heat up. Now, I mentioned that the economy version pump over there has a thermal relief valve on it. This one has a thermal relief valve too, but it's a brass one, not an aluminum one. Who puts aluminum in a jar of water and leaves it and expects it to not corrode after a month? Okay, aluminum and water don't mix. Just say no to aluminum things around pump systems. It's just dumb. Okay. So even those mounting blocks that are made of aluminum are going to corrode up and close up, and it's not really much of a thoroughfare anymore. So get brass or steel, whatever. But anyway, so the point here is that this has a thermal relief valve, but with this big bypass line on here, the pump system is going to heat up very slowly compared to that 3 ounces of water bypassing over there. So this thermal relief valve is going to open up exactly at 140 degrees where it's supposed to. And if you forgot the machine was running in the backyard while you were talking to the customer out front, when you go back to it, there will be some water on the ground, and the engine might have even run out of gas by now, whatever, but you've still got a pressure washer when you hook it back up with, fill the tank back up with fuel and start it back up again. It's still going to be a pressure washer. Okay. Now, if you're going to tank feed a system, then we're going to do it completely differently. We're going to bypass back to the tank, and you can never overheat 30, 50, 500 gallons, whatever you got in your holding tank. So, it's a completely different thing. And that makes an unloader valve live just huge.
Is it harder on the machine because people don't know that these pumps suck? Okay, and I'm not talking about suck literally, the suction. They have a suction. And so is it harder when they're not being force fed by the proper GPM with a feed hose versus having to actually pull? Do we see a different wear in a pump that's off a tank versus one that's fed by a let's just say fed by a, not necessarily, we don't want to use a garden hose, but just a water fed pump versus being off the tank? Is it are there different problems? Because we're talking about different contractors out here, right? A lot of residential guys, we know, we're hooking up right to a garden hose. Even some commercial guys with portable units are hooking up to garden hoses. Most of the commercial guys that are in this thing, not to knock the house washing guys and stuff like that, but most of the commercial guys are always going to have some type of a reservoir. Somebody said the other night, how big of a tank do you need to feed an 8 GPM pump?
Buffer tank they're talking about?
Yeah, you saw that one? Did you see
that? That's the terminology.
We used to, I remember we used to have a little float tank on the sides of the machines. A little float tank. Like, how many gallons is that, Jerry?
Ones that used to hang on the side
4 gallons. What were they?
Yeah, the one that used to hang on the side of a Landa was about 3-4 gallons, something like that.
Yeah, and and of course, that's all you needed if you had the right source. Why do you think they did that, Jerry? Why was that? What was the reason to have a float tank on the side of a machine that was only 4 gallons versus hooking it up?
Well,
not really an answer, because they're really, we don't do it anymore.
Here's the thing. The big box companies like Landa and Hotzi, Mighty M, places like that, Okay, their primary customers historically were construction companies. Okay, they sold portables to painting contractors and masonry contractors, and they sold hot water machines to go on a trailer out on a job site, or it was wheeled out in the yard, with 200, 300 feet of garden hose, and to run a 4 or 5 gallon a minute pressure washer at the end of 300 or 400 feet of hose. You might be sucking the seals out of that pump at that distance. So they put the water tanks on there to act as a buffer tank. That was your first buffer tank. Okay. What they did not do was give you a bypass line back to that water tank, which is what we started to do 35 years ago now. And we were getting unloader life like crazy out of those machines because we were bypassing back to the tank, and the unloaders weren't overheating as easily. Now, that was back in the days of the K7 unloader. K7 and K5 unloaders were key. It completely unloads the pump, and it's effortless in bypass when they were in bypass. So even though they had a fairly small bypass line, they lasted a reasonable time. But their biggest problem on that example, the construction industry was still using those long hoses and feeding into directly into the head of a pump, was starving the pump for water. Now, we'll do a in-depth what the heck is happening inside of a pump on one of our next Tech Tuesdays, because y'all need to understand what those water seals actually look like. I'm going to get some images that I can hold up in front of you so you can see an exploded view of what happens to water seals under these adverse conditions and how to diagnose them, because it looks different if it's been overheated from just cavitating all the time. Pock marks and scorch marks look differently. And when you get pock marks and scorch marks, boy, that thing went through some trauma, but we'll talk about that on another event. But getting back to feeding the pump with water, you've got to have you've got to have enough pressure into the head of the pump that it doesn't have to suck the liquid in very hard. Okay, if it has zero pressure but good flow into the head of the pump, it's going to be fine. You can get really good lifespan out of a pump like that. But as soon as it has to suck the water out of the garden hose or out of the feed line or through a filter, check that out. Check out that filter. That's not much of a filter. Hell, it's just a piece of pipe at this point in its life. It used to be a thoroughfare, but this is plugged up with rust. Okay.
Well, Jerry, you're you're striking a nerve with me, and I hope you don't use it, but back in the day, it drove me nuts that they would use that clear junk poly line like you got right there. That's a bypass hose line, but they would use that line right there to feed a pump. And of course, in 119 degrees, we know what happened to that line from the tank to the pump, right?
Right. Now, let me say something about this bypass line. Now,
that don't matter. I get it, but
let me finish. Let me finish on this one. Okay. This is really important. Okay. I have used the nylon braid hose on my bypass lines for years and years for my regular customers, so I can see if the inside of the line has been scorched. That tells me to tell them to remind their guys, don't leave the gun off for 5, 6, 8 minutes on a pressure fed system. It's still fine. It hasn't blown out. It hasn't blown up. The pump's still working fine. Unloader is fine. But at 130 degrees, it scorches the inside of that hose, and I can tell the customer. If the customer isn't concerned about that, if he's just going to take it out in the middle of nowhere, then I can put jackhammer hose on here and it'll live forever. No big deal. On feed lines, we like the clear nylon braid hose so we can watch for air bubbles. If you want to use the spiral reinforced suction hose, that's fine. I can still see the bubbles when they're coming in, and I can teach users to look for those bubbles. That's fine. If you're not going to do it with a clear line, then you have to pressure feed that system once in a while. If you shut off the valve at the bottom of your water tank and hook up a garden hose feed line, like on one of my systems, they have a pressure tap, then you can pressurize it with the garden hose once a week or once a month at least, and make sure there's no leaks anywhere. Or if you're troubleshooting, you want to be able to pressure feed and see if there's any leaks because you got a problem, you're looking for a problem. Number one rule of the rapid elimination of downtime is do the easy stuff first. If you can pressure feed it and find a leak, oh, there's the problem, fix it, no problem. But then if you took the water seals out of your pump because you found that the unloader wasn't bypassing and you didn't have any pressure, everything else is working fine, and you had to open up the head of the pump, you take the seals out and you see, oh my God, it looks like a mouse has been chewing on my seals. You got rat bites. That's cavitation. It was either starved for water from a clogged water filter for an extended period of time, or there was a leak. And if the water line can leak a drip of water, it can suck an air bubble. Because remember, these things make pressure in a pulsating manner. And just like a garden hose fed system hooked up to a water line that's 150 or 200 feet long, if there's a drip at that faucet, it can suck an air bubble in between each of those drips. And the water pump way over here can cavitate and actually lose pressure, or maybe not lose pressure. Maybe you don't even notice the pulsation, but over a long period of time. Here's an example. I got a guy that brought in a machine that has a whole bunch of hose wrapped up around his portable. He had two 5/8 100-foot garden hose wrapped up on his pressure washer. And he just brought me the whole thing, dropped it off and said, fix it in the service department. Okay. And the first thing that I said was, it's going to need water seals and an unloader, most probably because you're destroying it all at the same time, starving it for water. But also, if there was any leaks in between, an air bubble comes in between, or the restricted flow, or even a garden hose fitting. This one has a garden hose screen right here, in case the customer doesn't want to buy the nice big filter. Okay, but if that little screen gets plugged up and he's having to clean that thing once a week, well, in between cleaning it, it's still cavitating, and all those little tiny pock marks that happen on those water seals, at a million times an hour, those little pock marks add up. It destroys water seals. Everything you do that gets water into the head of the pump lends to the reliability, and everything that you can do to keep it from overheating and bypass lends to reliability.
We're about 8 minutes out, Jared, from being done, so I want to make sure these guys all know. Giving away a $200 cookbook tonight. Guys, all you got to do is ask a question, and you potentially could be winning a cookbook. Here we go. We got some questions coming up here. I see a video of the pressure washing, king of pressure washing, where he added an unloader valve to the pump and the unloader valve built in. Can you read that, Jerry, on your end or not?
I can't.
I'm not even sure. I don't even understand it. I see a video from the king of pressure washer where you can add an unloader valve to the pump with the unloader valve built in. That possible? I guess he's asking that question.
That was a really good question. So for all you guys that have all-in-one pumps and, oh my God, now what do I do? Because you spend all your money on the all-in-one. We have put external unloaders. So you literally treat this like it doesn't have an unloader. So you literally plumb this with an exterior unloader, turn this one up all the way so it doesn't function. Just undo those little set screw that thing in all the way, set it back, okay, and use the external unloader with an external bypass. Yeah, you got to set it all up, and that does work. But make sure that you've got it set where the external unloader is doing all the bypassing, and put a pressure gauge somewhere in the system so you know that the spike pressure is not going too high, and watch the air bubbles. We like those clear lines, okay? Watch the air bubbles to make sure that you do see water flowing in the bypass line when you're doing your weekly checks on your system. But that does work, and you can even hook that unloader up to bypass back to the tank, okay? That does work, but you're still going to there's going to be a day when the primary unloader does all the bypassing, and it's going to overheat real quickly, and you have to watch out for that. And these little tiny and one more thing, the all-in-one pumps are getting from the big manufacturers, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller check valves. The smaller the check valve is, the more it likes being pressure fed. So if you go to tank feed a system, you're going to have cavitation problems just from the fact that they got wimpy check valves. So there's too many things gone wrong with an all-in-one system. They were not designed to be reliable in the first place. It was designed to be an easy to assemble machine, put it in a box, throw a hose and wand in with it, have the factory pre-adjust the setting on the pressure, just get it out of here for money. That's how they were designed to be built. And that's all that they are. Okay. They were never even, probably never even tested on the rack.
We're going to have to take a few questions, Jerry. We only got about 5 minutes left. What unloader do you have the best luck with?
On a smaller system that runs, 2,000 to 3,000 PSI, we like the little VR2 unloader valves, like this one. This is a VR2 unloader. This is the 3,600 PSI version. They work for fine, really well, up to 5 gallons a minute, and they're cheap. They're $69.50. Throw it away in a year and a half, put another one on, no big deal. For going over 5 gallons a minute to 7 or 8 gallons a minute, the VRT unloaders are fine. They're not expensive. You're going to throw it away every year and a half. They're going to take abuse in between. Some of you guys are going to recycle and reuse wash water sometimes. It's a throwaway unloader, but they work fine until they start bleeding because the main valve takes such a beating on those things.
Art's got another question. I think it's a pretty similar question. 6.5 gallon GPM, best size unloader hose. I'm using 3/8.
That is a bypass line.
He says best size unloader hose. I'm using 3/8. So yeah, he's using a bypass line.
Let me answer. Very good question. So this is a little 3 gallon a minute pump, and I've got 5/8 hose on here that's 5 feet long. Okay. If you've got an 8 gallon a minute machine and it's being pressure fed with a garden hose and you want a bypass line on that, then I would use a 3/4 inch hose, preferably a nylon braid jackhammer hose, so it can handle the garden hose pressure and pressure spikes. And I would make that thing at least 6 feet long, maybe even 8 feet long, just so you've got a good 2 or 3 minutes without even letting the pump get warm. That'll do a good job for you. And with the thermal relief valve, that'll save that pump, no problem. But that's on a pressure fed system. If you're tank fed, you can't use a thermal relief. They suck air bubbles and cause cavitation problems. So you've got to get that thermal off of there if you're going to tank feed a system.
Now, do you have one with your dual feed, Jerry? I'm just curious.
A thermal?
No, the dual feed system. You got one that's showing the dual feed. You got one set up where you dual feed the pump. That's what you're known for, Jerry, as far as I'm concerned, showing guys. I mean, you can take it over to that system. Go ahead, either bring it over or you got to bring the camera a little closer, Jerry. You just don't worry about, we'll close our eyes right now to the bumbling around of the cam.
All right.
But if you bring it on over, you show these guys this, because we only got about 3 or 4 minutes left, and we got to wrap this thing up. But yeah, let it propagate right there. You got it honed in right there, Jerry. That's good. Let's see if it gets there. What you got clear?
So this one is garden hose fed, but they have the option of tank feeding it if they wanted to change the fitting and go to a large 1-inch line and tank feed this, because it does have dual feed. It's a 4 gallon a minute system, but we put dual feed on it as insurance that even if the guy put had a limited water supply on it or whatever, it would have a good chance. But this bypass line is about 5 feet long on this one. So it does bypass back to the inlet side of the pump on the back side over here. And there's that's how we plumb a a tank that has a system that has a chance at being tank fed.
But what I was talking about, like there, is show him Jerry with your hands, like you're going in on both sides of the pump.
Yeah.
So you're saying that by it sucking on both sides of the pump, you're not really putting stress on one side of the pump and wearing one side of the pump out. It's kind of this whole point is it's coming in, it's being sucked in evenly. It's got a freer flow. And you stand to say that this makes your pump have a lot more longevity. I mean, is that you stand by that?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes a huge difference.
Is it 25%, you think?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
25%.
I've got painting contractor customers and masonry contractor customers that have multiple machines and multiple users. And with the high volume bypass line, it solves their seal and unloader problems. Instead of coming in every 3 months for a new unloader or even a set of seals, I don't see these guys for a few years before they need an unloader. It's amazing how the huge, let me tell you, the big manufacturers will not copy what I do. They do not want you to have this level of reliability. They never have and never will.
Yeah, I know. I won't mention the pump manufacturer, but I went and did a little tour, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. I did a bunch of factories, and we were in the R&D. I don't know if you saw this video, but the owner of the big, huge, we're not going to say the name, they actually were saying they're engineering the pumps to fail. I was like, whoa, you just said that on video, man. You can't say that on video. I was like, and one of the things I want to talk to you about, Jerry, and this is kind of like not on the subject, but I want to let these guys understand this, that when this stuff's manufactured, whether it's a single tip, whether it's hose, sometimes it's pumps, we know sometimes it's engines, there are screw ups in lots of things. And I mean, not lots I'm talking about the actual lot. They're made in lots, right? They make 100 engine at a time. They make 3,000 tips at a time. They might cut out 5,000 foot of hose at a time. And sometimes things are screwed up and it sucks, but you may get like 100 brand new tips in and they're no good. They're just no good. They gave you a bunch of bad stuff. And sometimes you got to just throw that stuff away and you got to go get the new ones and hopefully you got from a different lot, order from somebody else, because it happens. And it frustrated me so badly, because you've been around long enough to know this. Honda had really good performance. I mean, in the very beginning, way back 20 years ago, like the performance was like off the charts. And then Briggs became better than Honda, which if you told somebody that now, they'd laugh at you. You know what I mean? Because now they're not even, now they both have issues just depending on what models you buy. You know what I mean? Depending on which ones you use. I like the smaller platforms on the Briggs, but once they take the same footprint. Is that what it's called? The footprint? And they're making the 16 horse a 20 some horse. And we know that when you take the same small platform and make it a larger horse, it's not going to last as long. It's just not possible, right? I mean, it's not. Is it?
Well, I mean, just fair is fair. And I'm telling you, from the service department, I watch this like a hawk. They just can't keep me out of the service department because I'm addicted to troubleshooting. But I'll tell you that the difference between a 23 horse Briggs and the 1618 is it has bigger heads. It's got a beefier block. It's got bigger fins for air cooling. It's got a bigger flywheel. They're not fooling around. I mean, it is a bigger engine. It's a better engine. It's made to do what it's supposed to do. Now, I have noticed that they're setting up these new Hondas for more horsepower on a small frame. I think that's where the party foul is, if you're going to use an example of manufacture. These Hondas are expected to put out a lot of horsepower.
So here we go. So here we go again. Briggs was doing it 15 years ago. Now Honda's doing it. And it seems like you're telling me now Briggs has changed their way and realized, hey, we can't put a bigger motor on that smaller platform because it's going to set a recipe for
I'm
disaster.
going to say this again. I watch this like a hawk. I don't want to sell a lemon. I don't want to sell problems. I need to sell reliability. I push having the best equipment in the industry by a lot. Every day, that's all I want to talk about is how I can build the very best. So I watch this like a hawk. I don't know.
So I'm gonna come out of the, I'm just gonna come out on this one, Jerry. Best 6 and 8 GPM pump. What is it? What's the best one right now?
I'm not going to let you change the subject on this. The best engine, okay, the best engine is, depending on what size you want, between a Kohler and a Briggs.
Okay.
I would say
so
that
a Briggs,
Kohler is more robust.
18, a Briggs 18, but not a Briggs 22. A Kohler, let's say larger motor, is going to beat a Briggs. Am I?
They are more robust. It's a bigger, beefier engine. As soon as you get over 21 horsepower, those Kohlers are a beefier engine.
So
but
lower horsepower Briggs, higher horsepower Kohler. That's where you're gonna get the best bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the bang for the buck, because the Briggs is half the price, isn't it?
Well, it's not a lot less. I mean,
it's not.
It's not a lot less. You know,
well, I know when you talk about those bigger Briggs, man, I mean, those bigger Kohlers, I always check those things out. They seem like Kohler was always more expensive, even than the Honda.
You know, 25% is getting to be a big number when you're up into the, $2,000, $3,000 motors. That's for sure. I mean, that adds up quick. But anyway, by the way, guys, on these bypass upgrades, I've got a lot of specialty fittings. I've got adapters to go from 1-inch hose to 3/4 inch for dual feeding. I got 3/4 to 5/8. I got all the way up to 1.5 by 1.25 and 2-inch by 1.5. I got all kinds of splitter tees to save fittings. The more fittings you have in a line, the more likely there is to be a leak. These are really helpful. Come to pressurewasher.net. We can fix you up with adapters. I've got bypass upgrade kits. I've got all this stuff to help you to not waste time. Feed the technical guy, and I'll save you a lot of time and grief down the road. That's what we do.
Awesome stuff. What are we going to talk about next week? We're going to talk about 12-volt systems. We really didn't cover the pump thing. I mean, we could do another hour. We can't do it tonight, but maybe we'll come back and pick this up and call it video 2 on the pump, because, man, there's a lot of things on the pump that, but I don't want to carry on. I know when we go hours on these videos, nobody watches them. I like to keep them a little bit short. Sure. Want to let you guys know we're going to be doing Tech Tuesday between 4:30 and 5 o'clock every Tuesday, guys, from here on out. You guys got questions, come on. We had some great questions fielded tonight. I'm going to draw this cookbook. Probably I'm going to make a separate video after we get done here. I'm going to draw this cookbook in like the next 15 or 20 minutes. I just got to get these other guys added in. Ben, Alejandro, Art will throw you in there. Art probably don't want a cookbook, but we'll throw you in there anyways. All the guys that answered a question tonight, inbox me, and you want a gallon of any chemical of your choice. So you 4 guys, you 3 guys, inbox me, and we'll get you guys a chemical. And just don't inbox me saying, hey, what's up? Inbox me and say, hey, I want some EBC. Hey, I want some F9. Hey, I want some Roof Tech. Let me know what you want, and we'll get you guys out a gallon of your choice for the show tonight. We appreciate Jerry coming on. Anything you want to say in closing, Jerry? We're wrapping this thing up. What do you want to tell these guys, other than next week we will do the 12-volt systems? I'm excited to do the 12-volt systems. And I got another question to ask you about the 12-volt systems, Jerry. If guys are converting because the 12 volts gotten better, if they're converting their 110s over, their 120 units, and they want to convert them to 12 volt, do you sell a box where the wiring's done? They can get the system, mount the box from you, hook up the burner, hook up the pressure switch, run it to the battery. Do you sell a kit like that or not?
Yes, we do. and I'm going
Awesome.
to push a flow switch onto the pressure switch, guys. If you want to use both, go ahead and use both. But I do not like pressure switches for turning on and off a heater. They are not reliable in an emergency. I've seen coils blow because they did not have a flow switch. And then when it comes to me, it's too late. I can't fix it before it's, when it's already broke. But I'm going to recommend a flow switch to anybody that has a pressure switch now, because it is a safer control. It's the truth, and whether you have water flowing or not.
Alejandro, inbox me for a pressure washing guidebook. Inbox me for one of these. You won one of those just for being a good sport out there and thanking us for the knowledge. We appreciate that. I know Jerry does too. Guys, don't remember, this is Tech Tuesday, guys. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday, 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Follow me, follow Jerry. You'll be notified when we come live online. That's how this works. If you guys want to know what exactly when we're coming out, you don't want to miss it. We are going to do 12-volt systems, pressurewasher.net. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go ahead and throw up Jerry's videos. Jerry's got more videos. We're going to throw those videos up right now. I just went ahead and put that link in there, and there's the link right there, guys. All you got to do is click on it. You can go to Jerry's page and get more in depth. His videos are on his own website are a lot more in depth. So you guys want to go there and watch Jerry's videos. Feel free to do that. Obviously, shop also. Jerry's a good
buy
guy.
Something once in a while.
Jerry is Jerry's always been to me, guys, the vacuum guy, but he builds some hella systems as far as from hot rods to everything. He calls them multi-purpose units. They are multi-purpose units. I want to do something. I put this surface cleaner up, Jerry. I don't know if you saw that. This is the unique surface cleaner that he builds. Guys, these are really good surface cleaners. Craig Harrison loves the Scirocco system and the surface cleaner. We'll also talk about your surface cleaner on one of these shows in the future. And I think we should run it, Jerry. I think we should run the surface cleaner and show them the cool things in the surface cleaner. Because you got a kit now where you add the dump valve on there so you can adjust the pressure, right?
Yep.
And then you got the gauges on there so you can see what the pressure is. Do you have a temperature gauge on the surface cleaner or not?
Yep.
Temperature gauge on the surface cleaner. So this is really cool stuff, guys, because you can know your temperature. He also has got some really cool things that he puts on his units that you can increase the temperature, which a lot of guys got away from doing that. We used to call them steam valves, but now what do we do? What do we call them? Multi-temperature valves, really? I mean, we're really not a steam valve because we're not trying to create steam, right? I mean, we could if we had the right hose.
We actually put a secondary unloader on a machine so that you have an adjustable range of lower pressure so that you can get the temperature up. Otherwise, if you simply put a smaller nozzle on the end of your wand and back up the flow going through your heater, the temperature is going to go up and you'll have full pressure. If you got a 6 gallon a minute machine and you put a number 4 nozzle on it, your temperature is going to go from 180 to 205. Really nice. You want to get some grease off, you need heat.
You need heat. People don't talk about people, and like you said, people don't talk about heat enough, Jerry. They do not talk about heat. They do not talk about it enough. That's for sure. All right, guys. But look for your video 15 minutes after this, guys. I'm going to draw right out of that fishbowl and announce one winner right after we get done here. All you guys, make sure you inbox me that asked a question tonight that we put up on the thing. There's 3 or 4 of you. Inbox me, and you'll get a gallon of your chems free. We'll send it right to your door, guys. Just make sure you check out and tell me what chemical you want. Don't just inbox me. Say what it is. Appreciate you coming out tonight, Jerry. We'll see you next week on Tech Tuesday, man. Ron Musgraves, Pressure Washing Institute out, guys. Don't forget to check the free events out, nationalcleaningexpo.com. Free events going on all over the country.